Okay, and we are recording. I've already recorded this once, and I did something wrong, I think, and the recording disappeared off my computer. So hopefully that doesn't happen this time. um, but hi, I am Miranda Larry, and this is my group therapy presentation. So the theory I chose was the psychoanalytic theory. I chose this theory because it was the one that during class I really enjoyed learning about the most. Um, and it was just really fun for me to learn about. And I was excited to be able to dive back into it and kind of like retouch on some of the things I learned about earlier in the semester. So I kind of wanted to touch on what the goal of this theory was at the beginning, which the goal of the analytic approach is to restructure a client's character and personality systems, which is just totally wild to me that there's a therapy out there that's purpose is to go back into your past and rediscover the things that have triggered certain aspects of your personality and things like that. So I think this theory and this kind of therapy are just very cool. The first thing I want to talk about is the key components of the psychoanalytic theory. So the first component is understanding that the past has influence on the present. Traumas that took place in someone's past can have extreme effects on who they are here in the here and now in the present. Experiences that take place during the first 6 years of life are called conflict roots. So these experiences are what, a lot of the conflicts that people have stem from. So things that happened at this point in your childhood are what greatly affect who you are in the future. The unconscious consists of everything that is kept out of awareness. So things that are in our brain but we just aren't aware of all the time, and a lot of times we don't even know are in our heads. Some of these things are motives and impulses. Freud believed that humans were largely controlled by their subconscious and that choices were not free will, which I don't know if I completely agree with that. I do think obviously there's free will, but I also believe that our unconscious definitely pushes us in certain directions. The concept of the unconscious holds a lot of importance in psychoanalytic therapy because it's basically the entire therapy is things from our past that we hold on to in our unconscious that we have no idea are really there, or just don't really ever bring attention to. In psychoanalytic theory, anxiety is seen as something that needs to be understood. Group members are encouraged to explore anxiety as a way to recognize it and kind of understand where their anxiety is coming from and why they have it. So the next component I'm going to be talking about is ego defense mechanisms. Ego defense mechanisms are the way your ego protects itself from threats. In psychoanalytic therapy, group leaders help members to recognize these defense mechanisms. Members are assisted in building up their tolerance for anxiety. Some coping mechanisms are repression, which is pushing things that we see as threatening into our unconscious. Denial, which is, pretty straightforward. It's us wanting to suppress things that we don't think are pleasant, that we can't handle. Regression, which is just going back down in the developmental scale, becoming less mature. Projection, which is attributing things that one deems unacceptable about themselves to others, which for some reason I couldn't wrap my head around this the first time I read about it, but now I kind of understand more that it's like if I see myself in a certain way, I'll project that onto another person and then see them in that way. Displacement is redirecting an emotion from its source to a person or an object. So if I'm angry about, something happening in my life, I'll take out that anger on a person or on an object. Reaction formation is behaving in a way that is opposite to one's emotions. So, like, when they're like really angry, they'll start laughing. That's an example of a reaction formation. Rationalization is assigning logical motives to behaviors in an attempt to rationalize them. So, well, I did this because they did this, kind of thing. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is resistance, which is being unwilling to bring things from the unconscious to the conscious. So resistance is when someone doesn't want to bring this threatening information that they have stored away in their unconscious back forward where they'll have to deal with it. Group leaders in psychoanalytic therapy work with group members in order to overcome resistive behaviors. Transference is an unconscious repetition of the past in the present. In psychoanalytic therapy, transference is actually encouraged, which is nothing like any other therapy. It's encouraged due to it playing a key role in knowing what behaviors are caused by events in one's past. So transference is very important in this kind of therapy. It's because the whole entire point is being able to connect the past to the present. Counter transference is when a group leader has an unconscious response to a client due to their own past. So if a client acts or talks in a certain way about something and it triggers something in the therapist about their own past. So it's really important if a therapist is going to be going into this kind of therapy that they have dealt with everything in their past and are able to go into this kind of therapy with a clear mind. So what kind of groups are used for psychoanalytic therapy? It's mostly used in family units, traditional kinds of groups, and in schools. I don't really know what else to say about this. It's used in family systems. It can also just be, the usual group therapy with a bunch of strangers all come together and help each other, or in schools to help kids with traumas that they've had to endure in their lives. So the time frame of this kind of therapy, I had a little bit of a hard time finding information on at first, but I found that sessions are usually 3 to 5 times a week, that's a lot of sessions, especially when you take into account that they're going to be doing this for 3 to 7 years. The reason that it's such a long time frame is because natural change takes 3 to 7 years, which natural change is how long it takes someone to naturally change a behavior that they have. So if you're in therapy to change a behavior, it's going to take a while for you to be able to change that behavior and keep it changed successfully. So what strategies are used in psychoanalytic therapy? The first strategy I'm going to talk about is free association. So free association is when group members share feelings and whatever comes to mind without censoring themselves. It encourages spontaneity. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And group members, which assists in the process of psychoanalytic therapy. So it's just, in all therapies, this is very important, just feeling comfortable and being able to talk without them feeling like they have to overthink or overprocess everything that they're saying. Interpretation is used to analyze information that was collected during free association. This process helps in making the unconscious conscious and bringing things forward that you didn't even really realize you were saying. Dream analysis is the process of interpreting dreams. During dream analysis, the therapist will guide members of the group to discover hidden motives behind their dreams. Dreams contain a lot of meaningful information that can be useful to group members. So I personally, dream analysis is something that's super interesting to me. I'm the kind of person that has 1 to 3 dreams every night, and I dream extremely vividly. And a lot of the times I'll look up my dreams, and I don't think there's really ever been a situation where I've looked up my dream and not felt like it applied to something I was going through. When I was in high school, middle school, at the end of every school year, I'd have a repeat dream. So I'd have the same dream every single year at the end of a school year, and it was my brain reacting to the stress that I was under. So dream analysis is something that I'm very interested in. I think it's very cool that they use it in this kind of therapy. So resistance analysis is the process of a therapist working with group members to acknowledge if they're using resistance and why they're using it. Transference analysis is analyzing the connections from the past to the present. So this is what processes are used in the application of psychoanalytic therapy and how processes are applied. Relational analysis places emphasis on both the therapist and the client's reaction and experiences within the group situation. Exploring anxiety is described as being Anxiety is described as being a feeling of doom and dread. The reason why it's a part of psychoanalytic therapy is because anxiety stems from a lot of these unconscious fears. And like I stated earlier, unconscious fears are a huge, huge part of this kind of therapy. Insight is the awareness of the connection between the past and the present. The process of learning how to use insight helps group members recognize how conflicts they have manifested. At the end of this process, group members should see themes in the connections they make. Again, this is something that's really interesting to me, just because the process of learning and becoming aware of how things in your past are connecting to the present and what's been causing all these things in your personality, your emotions, all that kind of stuff. It's just really interesting to me that people can learn how to make those connections for themselves. Obviously with the help of a psychologist or a therapist. So the working through stage is usually it's combined with the insight stage, but I just wanted to make them two separate things. So working through is the process of repeating interpretations and overcoming resistance. So working through is it's kind of like a combination of everything I've already talked about. It's the process of going through the therapy and making progress. This process allows group members to notice patterns from their childhood that are dysfunctional and resolve them. So finally, I'm going to talk about the diversity perspective. So psychoanalytic therapy works with all different kinds of ethnic backgrounds. However, like all therapies, it's very important to remain mindful of different clients' cultures. It's important to know about all different kinds of cultures as a therapist going into any kind of therapy, so you can know what's appropriate to use and if there are any aspects of the therapy that aren't appropriate for that person's culture. And these are my references. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I'm sorry that my voice is really gravelly. I'm getting over a cold, and I really hope you liked it, and I hope the video is okay and has audio this time. Yeah, thank you. Bye.